Welcome to the Paywall podcast, where we discuss paywalls and paywall strategies. We will talk with some of the publishers that we work with at Zine 101, the things that work and the things that don't. There's so many amazing things you can do in the digital world as a publisher to not only increase your digital subscriptions, but also engage your audience. Let's get started.
All right, we're back at the Paywall podcast. My name's Pete, and today we're going to talk about how to set up a paywall. And if you're thinking about starting subscriptions or memberships, or you currently have them running, then this is the podcast for you. This is the episode for you, because we're going to talk about the basically 4 ways of setting up the paywall that are working today, and we'll cover some other things as well. The question here is, what type of paywall setup is working best? And what I want to do is I want to kind of go back in time a little bit and talk about the original paywall, which was the hard paywall, or maybe the membership model, where a publisher would literally lock down their articles and you would just have no choice but to pay and gain entrance. And that has worked for a lot of membership sites with a lot of sweat. They get their members in there. They tease out the articles that they want to release to the public. So they're doing the job of choosing which articles are free and public and which articles are premium. And probably the best example of the hard paywall is the Wall Street Journal. And it works well for them because they are a big brand name. And when you have a big brand, you have the marketing to bring subscribers in. But if you're not a big brand like the Wall Street Journal, the hard paywall has proven to be difficult to start up. And we actually, I remember going through this with an old, this is probably 7 or 8 years ago. We had a national magazine client that decided one day, and they were doing a good job publishing all their articles on their site. And one day I received the word that they were going to lock down all their articles. And I honestly, I couldn't believe it, because, you know, the big thing about the hard paywall is Google cannot index any of the, they can't really rank the content properly because they can't get into the content. And then people on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram or whatever, they can't really share the content because it's locked, right? It's just locked down. There's nothing to send people to. So they said, okay, we're locking down all our magazine articles that we have on the website. And they were doing a good job. They were using Issue M actually to post all their articles online. And I tried to get them to change their mind. And I said, hey, look, you're going to take a huge Google hit, and social sharing is going to be non-existent. And they said, well, we need subscribers. So they did. They shut it off. And the first thing I did is I looked at what was Google, what was the traffic situation on their site. And it was like 30 days after they had shut it down, their traffic had dropped by 90%. I mean, I don't remember how much, if they had 100,000 page views a month or a couple 100,000 page views a month, all of a sudden they were down to, 10 or 20,000 page views. It was like watching a cliff drop, and this wasn't just Google numbers. This was all traffic that they had. And, it didn't go well for them ultimately. And it's something that I'll always forever remember as the, okay, and it's part of the reason why Leaky Paywall was born is, let's make sure that we play along with proper digital marketing efforts, right? The 3 things, and this kind of leads into the 3 things that a paywall has to do today. And one is, they might be obvious, but it's good to say them. One is Google needs to be able to index all your content, at least most of your content, and that includes social media sharing. So if you're allowing a few free articles, let's say with a metered paywall, then everyone, one article can be shared in thousands of different browsers without any trouble. The second thing is something that's becoming very clear now, and that is that you have to build your email list. And this is really the number one priority so if you're a publisher and you're not really aggressively getting people to sign up to your newsletter, whatever type of newsletter you have, that's something you need to jump on right away. It will throw so many benefits to you, and of course the best one being increasing your paid subscribers by 10x at the very least. Some publishers are saying 30x. And then of course the third thing is building those paid subscriptions. So those are the three things, and we're going to talk about that today. So let's jump into the ways you can set up a paywall. And I'm going to just jump right in with what is the best thing, or one of the best ways working today. And I think it's called the free registration wall method. And essentially what it is you with a metered paywall, at least with our metered paywall, it's very flexible. You can set up, okay, I want to give away 5 free articles a month, or 3 free articles a month, or 1 or 20 or whatever, and then I'm going to get the person to pay or to register for free. And the registration method is kind of an intermediate step where let's say you set your meter to 3 free articles per month, which is a solid number for a typical news publisher. And then after those 3 free articles are consumed, the 4th article, you get the subscription nag. That's what we call it. It says, hey, please register, and we'll give you a few more free articles per month. And so what that does is two very important things. One is the person gets, of course, the free articles, and they sign up, but you get that email address. And this is turned into such a big deal. So now you have an email address of a new person who's registered on your site, and you've also started the relationship with that person. And if you're doing your job with email marketing, now you have that extra email address, and free sells. I mean, you put up a free registration wall, which is simple user registration. You'll be surprised at how many new subscribers you get. So you get that email address, it increases your email list substantially, and you started building the relationship with that new subscriber. And so like I said, the data suggests that for every email address you collect, that person has a 10 times greater chance of subscribing, because if you're doing your newsletter marketing properly, is what you're sending the content, all your new content that you're publishing via email to that new sign up, and they're getting linked back to your site, and they're consuming that article that they're reading and maybe other articles. And if they're now registered and logged in on your site, it's chewing up their free articles that they get. And then they hit the next subscription nag, which is time to pay. It's the one that says, hey, we really love that you love our content. Please support us by subscribing to gain full access, or whatever that pitch is going to be. So you get this over time. You have the free registered subscriber, and over time, day after day, week after week, however frequent you send along the emails, they're being what I call organically pestered into subscribing, because it's a gentle, the email comes out, oh, that's an interesting article. I go back to the site, I read the article, I try to read the next one, and oh, I got to subscribe. No, I'm not going to subscribe. A month later, it's the same thing, right? They're coming back to the site, and eventually, like my wife did, they say, what the heck, I'm just going to pay and support these guys. And that works extraordinarily well. So getting that email is just so key. And as a side benefit, well, it's not really a side benefit. Another big benefit is your email list will grow. And if you're, which you should be, selling sponsorships to your email list or to your newsletter, then that's going to help you, because you can have a bigger email list, and that'll be more attractive to advertisers. We worked with the Business Journal out of Youngstown, Ohio. We set up their free registration wall for them. And when we launched, and they were pretty pleased. In their first week and their second week, they got 1,000 new registrations in their first week. I think about 1,000 new registrations in their second week. And then it's likely been sort of curving down a little bit, but early on, when you set up that wall, you'll have a big influx of registrations, and you'll get a mix of paid subscriptions at the same time. One of the questions I get is, gee, if I give away content for free, right? Like, why would I pay? But the reason is because, well, the casuals who really aren't that interested, they'll never pay. But anybody who's kind of a super casual, more towards a hardcore reader, now you're going to be sending them your content every day or every week, and they're going to want to read that content, and that's the engagement that you gain by gaining that email address. So it's absolutely, I can't emphasize it enough. It's super powerful.
Yeah, and part of that as well is you're kind of building that trust over time. It's a lot lower barrier to entry as far as the sales process goes. There's not as much of a commitment for the user, so you get to build up that relationship over time, kind of dip your toe in the water instead of asking, will you marry me on the very first date?
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, you're proving to them that you're publishing good content because you're sending it to them via email every day or every week. Or every month, depending on what you're doing. And so they get to experience that, and that is part of the relationship. So when it's time to pay, when they keep hitting that request to pay, you've earned that trust because they know they're getting good content from you. I'll also say that the other benefit of this registration wall approach is that it reduces the friction point of making a purchase. So typically you'd meter your content or lock it down, and then they'd hit the, hey, you have to pay for full access, and you pitch it, right? And then they get to a long form, and they got to fill out their name, their email, choose a password, choose the subscription that they want, monthly or annual or whatever, enter their payment information, and then hit submit. So there's a lot of steps that they have to go through when there's no registration method. It's just, okay, now it's time to pay. But with the registration wall, you're saying, here's more for free. You just have to register. Well, you're getting that step, which is like step 1 out of 2 steps, out of the way, right? And people like free, so the motivation for signing up is high. So, and they're registered, they're logged in. And then when it's time to pay, you as the publisher already they're already registered on the site. So all they got to do is type in their credit card information. It's a much less painless step. And so it reduces the friction of the whole payment of the steps, and breaking it into 2 actually helps increase your conversions for that reason. So one of the things that some of our publishers have started doing and is working well is being able to get more demographic data from their readership. So when you have that, and this is easy to set up, well, at least with Leaky Paywall, but when you're giving away your more articles for free, you're in a good spot with that person who's signing up. They're excited to give you their information and get in and keep reading because they're not paying for it. So that's a good time to ask a couple questions. So if you need to collect demographic information, depending on the type of audience you have, just 1, 2, or 3 questions that would help you organize how you email your readership. It's a good time to do it during that registration process. And I know with Leaky Paywall, we've integrated with like MailChimp groups, so you can have readers sign into different newsletters and send out targeted newsletters to each group. So that's another way of kind of surveying who your readers are and what they actually want. But at the very least, just collect the data that you need. And for instance, we have a Portuguese news publisher in New Jersey we're working with now, and they have clusters of Portuguese communities around the country, and so they target their news. They're working on breaking up their news by country, and that is going to allow them to ask, hey, where are you located on that registration page, which will help them target their newsletters down the road. So that's the free registration wall approach. The second one I'll mention is one that's worked for a very long time across all industries, and that's the free trial. When it's time to actually ask for money, this is proven time and time again to be the best way to convert a paying subscriber, and that means you offer a free trial or a paid trial. So it's $0, but you have to enter your credit card in, and you get 30 days of full access or something like that, or you pay $1 for the 30 days or the 2 weeks or 2 months or however you set that up. And it's, we live in this freemium world. We have been living in it for a long time, and it, the free trials have been around for decades in lots of other industries. But giving away something for free, like an app download would be a popular one today, absolutely works. You want to check something out, it's not going to cost you any real money right now, but you are interested enough to offer a credit card, and then the content's good. Hey, this is pretty good. I'll just keep it riding, and you end up with that hopefully recurring payment that charges on their card. And this, I'm going to take a little sideways step here, but sort of reminds me of that whole friction thing. Sometimes publishers say, hey, I want to sell an article, or I want to sell a PDF, or I just want to sell this single item, or should I set up recurring payments? And the friction is putting the credit card into the system. That's really the biggest friction point. And and that argues for setting up recurring monthly payments. If you look at Netflix, they're probably the best example. They have a monthly recurring payment, and once you pay it, you're in, and there's no more friction. There's no more pain. That pain point's gone. So yeah, you put in your credit card, you start getting full access to the publication, and that charge just becomes part of your credit card bill. So yeah, it hurts to pay the credit card bill, but that's the one, you're paying the whole thing, and that individual purchase pain point is gone. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And one thing that trial does is it also helps get rid of spam users, because one downside we didn't really touch on the free registration wall is that someone could put in just a fake email address. And so by offering the free trial where they have to put in the credit card, that helps remove those kind of fake users. One way around that on the free registration wall I just wanted to touch on is you could also do require an email verification. So after someone signs up on the free wall, they have to verify in their email address by clicking a link. And so obviously they'd have to put in a valid email in order for that to work. So I just wanted to make sure that that we mentioned that, because we have had a few questions from publishers about fake emails on the free registration wall.
That brings up another good point. I get lots of questions from publishers who say exactly something like that. Hey, what about spam registrations, or what about incognito browser, getting around the paywall, or being getting the login, paying, getting your login and then sharing it with all your friends, like all these concerns about getting around the paywall, right? And maybe that's a topic for another day. But the bottom line answer is that people that are creating fake email accounts, to your point, they're probably not going to pay you ever, right? They're doing extra work to get around your $5 or $10 or $15 a month or whatever you're charging, and it's worth it to them to spend the time. And in the world we live in today, time is really the most valuable resource we have. And most people, and this is who you're targeting, is most people, they don't want to be bothered. They just want to, if something's looks good to them. They want a convenient, quick way to pay, gain access, and yeah, they're supporting the publication as well. So yeah, you could go crazy putting up walls to try to stop, I don't know, I don't want to call them cheaters, but people that are getting around, I mean, we all do it. It's, you're not going to subscribe, but you do want to read that extra article. You're not really the hardcore subscriber. But is it really worth trying to fight that? No, not really. And it can create other administrative headaches for you too.
Yeah.
So
and that's part of the reason why you're trying to build that relationship. That's more important than
right.
Trying to block all the loopholes. Is how can you build that relationship? And if you focus on that,
yeah,
then that's what's most important.
Yeah, and the people getting around, like, it's the 5%, maybe it's the 10%, but that still means that 90% are people who would eventually want to pay just for access or potentially pay. All right, so that was the free trial conversion system. Now, do you use a free trial in conjunction with free registration wall? I think that's a great approach. I can't give you any hard data, but it certainly would get somebody to pull their credit card out and say, okay, well, I have limited access now. I really want more access. Here's $1 or here's $0, but I'll put in my credit card and I'll get that full access. And then off you go. You have yourself, hopefully, a recurring subscriber. Do you have to do it? No, you could have the registration wall, and then you can, and we have a lot of publishers that have it set up this way. And then when it's time to pay, it's time to pay. And that was their free trial, was registering on the site and getting a few more extra articles each month. Now the bottom line here is you got to test it for yourself, for your audience. And that's one thing that is really important, is whatever starting point you pick, you don't have to stay there. You can offer 3 free articles per month and a registration wall. But what happens if you tighten down your free registration wall to 2 free articles, or 1, which we have a few publishers that are doing, and it does great. So take a 30-day window at least, I'd say, and make 1 change and see what it does. So number three is typically being called the metered hybrid paywall approach. Okay, what does that mean? So metered hybrid. When you start, you'll likely start with the metered paywall, and you might have the free registration wall as well. But ultimately, all your content, or most of your content, is metered. So you have limited number of free articles per month as the general public, and then you take the subscription. Now, this is like a kind of a step 2 for subscription strategy. As you start gaining subscribers, and you'll obviously always learn more and more about what they really want, the hybrid part comes in when you start creating premium content that is only for paid subscribers. You actually lock it down separately for paid subscribers. And Jeremy, you had an example, right? With Catch Magazine, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with Catch Magazine, which is a fly fishing magazine where they write articles with a lot of amazing photography, but then their big piece every issue is they put together a video, probably 20-30 minute kind of almost full length video that describes a specific area or a specific location. And so that's the main draw for a lot of people. And so what they chose to do was the articles themselves are on the metered approach, where you can read so many before they ask you to subscribe. But the videos themselves are always behind the paywall. So in order to watch the video content, you have to subscribe because that is their premium content.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I was reading an article about Le Parisien, the French news publication, and they were doing a very similar approach. Where metering all their content and then starting to build out exclusive premium content only for paid subscribers, and they ended up doubling their paid subscriptions doing that, and they're actually now producing more paid premium only content for the site, and they're finding that a lot of this premium content is the trigger for the paid subscription, which is really cool. So I say for any publisher that's producing content, keep an eye out for what your subscribers are really reading, what they're gravitating towards, and figure out a way to, once you have your paywall running and you're taking paid subscriptions, either create premium content exclusively for them, or you can even package up existing content. Maybe you have a deep archive of thematically similar articles that you can put together into some sort of a package or an issue. You could do that with Issue M very easily, and you could lock that down for paid subscribers. There's lots to consider. I think there are a lot of opportunities in terms of content. I mean, video is certainly a good example. I haven't seen any audio, like podcasts tend to be free, but I know I have read that there is some premium paid, podcast content coming, which certainly makes sense. So that'd be something to look at. And then thinking about articles or article series that would be subscriber only, you could lock down just for subscribers. So that's yeah, that's something to absolutely look at.
Yeah, I have seen one example where someone only specific piece of content within the article was locked down. In this case, it was an audio file. So in order to do that, they just wrapped a shortcode around it to make sure that the user had a valid subscription.
With leaky paywall.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that too, where a publication will have like a premium document, that they had to purchase in order to put it on their website, and they'll wrap that around their paywall so that all the content around it you can read, but you can't download the PDF or whatever the special content is without being a paid subscriber.
That's perfect. Have you gotten any feedback from that approach at all?
Not yet, but they just started it, and we'll see. We'll see whether or not that works or not. It's really going to come down to whether or not people can find that content elsewhere for free.
Right.
So.
Right. Yes, the monopoly of content dilemma.
Yeah, and I think that also is a good point too. Like a lot of this is just experimenting, right?
Yeah.
You got to experiment and see what's going to work for your particular audience.
Yeah, I see that a lot. It's like one publication, a 7-day free trial might work, and then you have to pay. Whereas I go 50 miles down the road to a different publication, and it doesn't really work as well. So it's all about your audience and the target and what they're willing to do.
Absolutely, every audience is definitely different.
Yeah,
you got to figure it out. I'll move on to the number 4. As far as a type of approach, this is another little more of an advanced approach. I don't really know what to call it, so I'm calling it the super premium approach, and that's absolutely not an official definition. But we had, and the idea is that you have your metered paywall, you have your premium content, you're getting subscribers, and then you can lock down content for existing subscribers. But what about creating a whole new premium subscription level that costs more to gain access to something that's different than what you're producing? And so we had a great example. iPolitics in Canada, they're a political news publisher. During the last election cycle, what they did is they created a super premium level for election coverage for 3 months. So basically, it was 3 months of daily updates to what was going on with their elections, and they where their normal subscription was running. Actually, I kind of forget if it's $5 a month or whatever their $10 a month or whatever their normal subscription is, but they were charging $100 a month. And in fact, if you signed up like on day 1 of those 3 months, you pay $300 for that information. If you signed up 30 days into it, so you only had 2 months left, you'd pay $200. You basically paid for the block of time, they kind of prorated that block of time. And it was easy to set up, and they sold enough to be happy with it. And think about it. You go from a $5 or $10 a month product to a $300 product, right? Now, of course, it takes a lot of work for them to cover all that, but it was something that they could easily, bring up and say, you can access this. And the beauty is you have this, you have your hopefully free registration wall feeding your email list, right? That's converting subscribers. Your base of your audience is growing. I mean, your digital audience should actually absolutely be growing right now. There's no reason for it not to be. And then you bring up this super premium product and say, hey, growing audience, this is what we're doing now, and sign up, and they do. So if you guys can think of a better term than super premium, let me know. It sounds a little corny. All right, and the last one, number 5, I want to say it's not really I guess it is a paywall strategy, but one of the things that's becoming very, very clear as far as increasing paid subscriptions is offering apps to your readers. That is iOS and Android apps, and for a lot of reasons. It's the best reading experience available today. I think 90% of phone use is through an app. The statistic is somewhere around that. The app is on our phone. We can or iPad or whatever, and you can just tap it, and it's convenient. You get push notifications, so you can instantly communicate with those readers, and that's great. But there's also discovery, and that's the thing nobody realizes. We have our Unipress app platform, which ties in with Leaky Paywall, so we can kind of monitor, what's happening with discovery in the App Store. And when we talk to our different publishers that are running apps, the numbers we're getting are pretty wide. So we have some publishers that will say up to 50% of new subscriptions are coming in through the App Store, and some publishers that say, and we look at, looks about 10% of subscriptions are coming through the app stores, and then everything sort of in the middle. And if you just start Googling around, you'll see that apps are kind of on the table again because of the discovery, because of the convenience. It's the best way to read content. And there's one more thing that I keep hearing today is they keep you logged in, right? And so regardless of what publishing system you're using, if it's on the web, there's always a login, right? And then you go to a different browser or you go on your phone or whatever, and then you got to log in again, right? And it seems like a simple thing. And to me, I was originally like, yeah, that's a simple thing, but it's not a simple thing because it's a pain to log into everything all the time. So with apps, you solve that. You check off that problem right off the bat, right? It's like, okay, I download the app, I log in with my existing email and password, and I'm in. Boom, forever. You just logged in. Your device is connected to the publication, and you have this beautiful reading environment, and you don't have to worry about logging in. And you have the publication in your pocket.
Yeah, and I think too, the value proposition of an app, even if your users aren't heavy app users, having that as part of your subscription, I think helps. It helps people make that jump to subscribe, knowing that they have premium app access.
That's a great point. That's absolutely true, right? So when you're pitching, I hate that word, but that is the sales word. When you're encouraging somebody to sign up, that could tip the scales. That's like, oh, right. They have an app. Oh, I could just download the app. Oh, that's cool. That's great. And then off they go. Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of levels up your publication in many ways. It's like, wow.
Right. These guys are serious. Yeah. The public is serious. They're giving us apps. So those are the 5 things that we see working today as far as paywall approach goes. Just to reiterate, the first thing and the second thing and the third thing you should always do is work on building that email list. And that registration wall is probably the answer for most publications. Another question I get is, what do I set my meter to? In other words, how many free articles should I give away? And that answer is really dependent on your audience and your the amount of the quantity, the volume of articles you produce each month or each week. And so if you're a producer of one article a week, maybe it's a long form article like Tea Journey is, you're probably going to restrict access a little bit more. So you might have your meter set to just one free article a month that you're giving away before somebody has to register or subscribe. And but if let's say you're a news publisher and you're producing 500 articles a month, let's say, as maybe like a weekly news publisher, well, then you're going to need to give away more, maybe 5 articles per month. But maybe you're producing sort of very technical or high-end content, and you know that your customers want access to it. That would argue for setting the meter to something low, like 1 article per month or 2 months, so that there's just really a big motivation to either pay up front or to register right away. And to follow up on that, so you can look at the volume and look at your audience and the type of content you're producing, but the important part is to experiment with it. So from what I've seen, for a typical news publisher, local regional news publisher, 3 free articles per month seems to be a pretty magic number, and that's a good starting point. But you want to know what happens if you change that to 2 free articles a month or 1 free article a month, or how about 0 free articles a month? Oh my God, now we're making it a hard paywall. But I'll tell you, military travel publisher, and of course it's COVID now, so it's not so much travel, but what they were doing is during the summer travel season, when their readership really swelled, and they're all about like military, discounts for hotels and campgrounds and free flights or discounted flights for military and stuff like that. Kind of a database of information. So in the summertime, their audience swells, and what they did was they started mixing up their meter, knowing that they had this like real strong influx during the summer, where each month they would have the meter set to, like, 1 week it was set for 1 free article, another week it was set for 4 free articles, and then 2 weeks it was set for 0 free articles too. And by definition, if you set your meter to 0, that means you get no free articles. That essentially turns at least our paywall, the Leaky paywall, into a hard paywall. And what they were doing is dancing with Google search, because they wanted to make sure all their content was indexed, and they produce a fair amount of content. And so they would have the meter running during peak periods for a couple of weeks, but then for the other 2 weeks of the month, let's say, they would actually turn the meter to 0. And it worked for them. Their conversions, when they had the traffic coming in, and then when they went to 0 for a limited period of time, it forced people to make that decision: do I pay or do I not? And they got, I think they said they increased their subscriptions by like 15% or something, just from using that technique. So that's another way to look at it if you really want to be aggressively curious about what your meter does to your visitors coming in.
I was just thinking too that, and something we haven't really touched on, is when it comes to a paywall, it doesn't have to be either this on or off type situation. You can also give people a paragraph or 2 paragraphs of the content, and then ask them to pay. So if you're struggling on what to do, there's a number of ways that you could go about this without making it a binary thing.
Absolutely. You could meter your content generally, and then for your premium articles, you could just set your excerpt to be, half the article. Let's say it's a long form article, right? Or a third of the article, and get people sort of invested in reading. And then it's like, oh, if you want to read the rest of the article, you have to be a paid subscriber. And that does work. I subscribe to a newsletter or a news site just like that. And it absolutely worked for me. I was getting into the article and it's like, it was a technical article and I was into it and, oh, I got to pay to read the rest of it. And you look around and you're like, oh, the rest of this looks good too. I'm in, and
Right.
yeah, no, that's a very good point.
Yeah, and I think when you combine that, a lot of the publishers that I work with are in small regional areas, they're newspapers, and they combine this strategy with the free trial or a paid trial, and it seems to work for most of them. It seems to work pretty well.
Yeah, I like that approach. Yeah, excerpt. Yeah, it really it's like super teasing your premium content.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Is that an official word? Can we use that one? I use the word super twice though. Super premium and super teasing. I'm running out of ideas. All right. So let's, why don't we switch tactics and talk a little bit about the language, kind of the approach to subscribing. This is something that there are two parts to this. One is the actual how do you encourage the reader to pay? Like what's the language? And the second is the actual subscription nags themselves. So in other words, when you hit let's say you get 3 free articles, you hit your 4th article, and you get like the excerpt of the article, and then you get what we call the subscription nag inside the article. It says, hey, it's time to pay. And what I see a lot of publishers doing, unfortunately, is not paying attention to that subscription nag. So, by default, with any subscription system, there's like a default language that says, hey, subscriber, log in to gain full access. And time again, I'll run into I'll be talking to a publisher and I'll look at their subscription nag and I'll test it, right? And then I'll use up the free articles. It'll pop and it'll say, subscriber, log in. And that's all it says, right? and I think that, you just have to pay attention to, today's modern reader really demands to know what they're going to get. What are the benefits that they're going to get for paying? Now, yeah, it might seem obvious on the publisher side. You're producing all this great content. You're firing out 500 articles a month or more, whatever you're doing, and that the articles speak for themselves, and they do, and that's great. But you still need to tell the person who's thinking about pulling out their credit card what they're going to get. How's it going to help them? How are you going to make their life better? And it's worth working on the language for those, in sort of those subscription nags that show up. And it's the stuff that might be obvious to many publishers, but stay like. Don't miss an article. Keep tabs on what's happening in your community. Don't be left out. That's sort of a little bit more negative language speak, but it does work. And getting full access. That language works really well. And so to kind of take a hard look at the bullet points that you should be outlining that you get when you subscribe should be showing up. Right there, right in the article when that subscription nag pops. So that's one thing to always look at. I mean, it's where the rubber literally hits the road. You're asking them to subscribe right there, and then that's a really important step. And then once they decide, they get carried off to the payment page or the registration page or however you have it set up, and off they go. But it's that point that really is you want to make them click on subscribe to go to the next step. And so to watch that language. And then that sort of dovetails into the feel of the language. And I had this conversation with a publisher last week, and they were a high school sports publisher. I was being educated that their audience thought that the schools paid for the news, right? And I've heard from other news publishers that say that a lot of people think the government pays for the news, pays their writers to produce news, and that the general public just, and I think this is pretty obvious in a lot of cases, is the general public just doesn't know where the income, or they see a lot of banner ads on a website and they think, oh, they have all this advertising, they're getting all this money, when the opposite is true, right? So to add to the language when it's time to subscribe should be that emotional connection that says, hey, we count on your dollars to pay our writers, to do the research. We are not, you might even have to say we're not funded by, in his case, the schools or the government or any other source. Our money is made primarily on subscriptions and maybe advertising or something that tells that potential subscriber that we need your help. We're not a wealthy conglomerate. We're a news or a magazine publication. We work hard to do the research and bring you these articles, and we live off of your dollars. Like we need you. That type of language is proven to work well and should be embraced.
Yeah, and there was actually a study done, I think, within the last year that it showed that the majority of people, at least those who were surveyed, didn't realize that local news or local newspapers are in trouble, that they're struggling financially. And so, and a lot of people think, again, like you said, they think that the local government or the federal government or state government funds the news. And so I don't think it hurts to put in your subscription page, or in your, as we call it, the subscription nag, put in there that you're independent, put in there that you're not funded by the government, put in there so your audience knows. It might seem obvious to a journalist, but right, perhaps your audience doesn't realize that. So
I certainly don't. As just a reader of news, I know now, but I certainly didn't. Or even if I get a paywall prompt and they're not telling me that they're funded, where they're funded by, I assume everything's okay on their end. They just want me to subscribe, and I'm not saying cry like, hey, we're hurting, but just that, we'd love to have your support. This is how we grow and provide better news. Your dollar converts to better news, and we need that dollar.
Yeah, I think PBS is really good about this. They're very, they let you know that everything, or at least most of the shows that I hear, are funded by viewers like you, or listeners like you. So
yeah, good point. So I have one last thing I want to talk about, and that's pricing, which is a really important part of success because it influences your revenue directly, and is the easiest way to increase your revenue in any business, really. So I alluded a little bit to Netflix before, and there's sort of two parts to this one. One is trying to keep your price levels, your subscription offers, as absolutely simple as possible. I have seen too many publishers come out with 7 different options on their subscription cards for different audiences. For, you have annual, you have monthly recurring, you have, if you're a print publisher, you have your maybe monthly print, you have quarterly print, you have every 6 months print, annual print, student offerings, corporate offerings. And those are all great, and there's nothing wrong with having them. But when it comes to landing on that final subscribe page, at the very least you want to have 3 cards, because 3 is a psychological number where our brains can process 3 things at a time pretty easily. We're used to things in 3s. It's been proven. I don't know what the studies are, but 3 works. So you have, if you're a print publisher, it gets more complicated. If you're a digital only publisher, it's a little easier. But even for print, so I would say, and forget if you have a free registration set up on your site, which would be great, don't have that card on your subscribe page. Just remove it, because you can take people directly from that subscription nag in the article that says, hey, register for free, and take them right to the registration page. And then they just fill that out, check out, and they get directed back to the article they were reading. So on your final subscription page, which you're asking to pay, have your paid options on that page. And so if you're a print publisher, it's probably going to be, and of course everyone's different, but it's typically digital only versus print plus digital. Those would be the 2 simplest options. And so digital only, yeah, you could offer monthly, you could offer annual. I would suggest whatever it is, make it recurring. Monthly recurrings is would be best, according to Netflix, who succeeded so well. And then print, you might have some options within that card for, quarterly or every 6 months delivery or annual or whatnot. But that's 2 cards. Even as a print publisher, you can slim yourself down to. Back to Netflix, you go to them and try to sign up, right? What do you get for options? You get a monthly recurring. You can't buy a year, right? There's no other option. It's just monthly recurring. So part of it is keeping, a confused buyer never buys. A confused customer never purchases. You don't want to confuse your audience. You don't want to give them too many options. It's the data is pretty clear now that if you come out with one option, it actually builds trust, because it's one option. There's no, oh, should I get this or should I get that? And it's simple, it's understandable, and it's you can act on it quicker, right? Okay, oh, this is it. All right, that's simple. I'm in. Boom, and that builds trust. So look at Netflix for guidance on that. But the recurring monthly, the recurring annual, those are absolutely good ways to go. One other thing you could do, which you may or may not be opposed to, is have something called decoy pricing, where you offer something else as a third level, and it's a higher price. And what it does is it makes your other 2 price levels seem more reasonable. Now, ideally, you have super premium content, back to the super premium, that you're actually offering as a third option, or something different as a package that you're offering. But this third level, maybe the subscriber gets to be a platinum sponsor or whatever it is. It's more money, it's more support to the publication. It creates a contrast against the other 2 pricing options that are available. Or just add a 2 or 3 year option. It's a higher price because you're going to subscribe for 3 years, non-recurring, right? And that number compared to the other numbers is a higher number. Okay, I'm not going to do that, but maybe I'll do this, and pick the 1 year or the monthly recurring option. As far as what to charge price, this is part 2, right? I had a conversation with the number 1 grazing how-to publications on pasture this week. Really nice conversation, producing great content. And we talked a little bit about pricing, and they were charging $5 per month. And the comment that I got was, gee, I've been looking at this other consumer magazine. I don't know if it was Vanity Fair or some other magazine, and they were charging $2 a month or something like that. And I'm afraid I'm charging too much. And they have a good subscriber base already, and they're growing. But the thought was, gee, if I lower my price, maybe I'll get more subscribers, right? When in actuality, you have to kind of look at your audience. So they're helping farmers with grazing, and that's their niche, and they're arguably the number 1 in that niche. And when you are a local news site, you are arguably number one in your local news niche. Like the New York Times would arguably be the number one national newspaper. And so then you can set pricing. And on Pastor's case, they're B2B. They're not writing information to consumers, they're writing information to businesses. They should be charging more. They have a niche, and they're setting pricing for professionals who are having pain because something's going wrong. How many cows can I put in an acre of field? I've learned a few things about grazing. Anyway, and so my recommendation was not to look backwards, but you're the leader. You can put your own stake in the ground and say, no, it's not $5 a month. It's $9 a month. You could almost double your monthly rate. And we've seen this with other publications in the past. Is if you're providing good content and you're the top in your niche, and you increase your price, first of all, you can leave it so your existing subscribers don't get affected. Although you could increase it for them as well, which is a whole different thing. But what we found is new subscribers coming on board, nobody said anything. Nobody says anything. They just pay the price and they come on board if it's good content and you can't get it anywhere else, especially if it's B2B. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and I think they're going to act on that by bringing the price up and repackaging. They have this big database of content, so they're going to actually go start locking down some of their really premium articles as subscriber only, as we discussed earlier, and then they're going to repackage some of their content into how-tos or guides that will also be premium only content. So so as far as pricing goes, bottom line, don't be afraid to go up. I pay $15 a month in New Hampshire for our local news, and I don't get the newspaper. It's just the digital only subscription. And you might think, wow, $15 a month for a local regional digital news subscription. That's a lot. But where else do I go? I mean, there's really nothing else I can subscribe to up here that's like a traditional, news site. I have a paid newsletter as well for content up here, but $15 a month, it's not unheard of, and for local news. If you're just starting, if you're launching, and you need to set a price to get going, and let's say you're that local publisher, don't start at $15 a month. Probably start a little lower, because what you want to do is you're in a learning phase in terms of what your customers want. That's what's most important, really, at the time. Yeah, you need the income, but you need to understand what your subscribers are what are they gonna ask you for next? What are the products you could build to serve them down the road? And you want those paid subscriptions to come in. You want them to spread the word. If you're launching something and you start with too high a price, you're going to put up a pretty big wall where a lot of people will just say, no, that's too much, because it's an unknown entity, and they won't come back, because once you set that price too high, they're just not going to come back and check. And even if you start a little too low, that's okay, because it's really easy to raise prices. I mean, especially if you leave your pricing alone for your initial group of subscribers, and then you raise it for incoming new subscribers, nobody complains. That's great. That's the way it works. It works in almost every industry. Anything new starts at a low price, and as you gain momentum with buying, the price goes up. And then you get the key is you get to learn about your audience. You get a deeper understanding of what they really want, so you can produce that, give it to them, and offer new products, or raise your pricing, and you just go back in your dashboard and change the number. I think that's it for me on how to set up your paywall. Hopefully that was helpful. You guys have any other final parting thoughts?
Yeah, and I think really what's important to remember is there's not one way to do this, and the same thing is not going to work for everything or for everyone. So play around with it, try it out, try different things, and see what works. So.
Yes. Testing. Absolutely.
Right.
Try different things. Every 30 days, I'd say. Try something new. See what happens. And if you have any questions on setting up your paywall, please get in touch, because me personally, Pete, I love talking about the strategy behind generating paid subscriptions. So I'll talk to anyone at any time about that.
Thanks for listening to the Paywall Podcast. You can find us at paywallpodcast.com. Be sure to subscribe in your podcast player of choice, and we'll see you next episode.